Check out Bad in the Boondocks. If you listen to podcasts, or even if you don't, check out this new podcast called Bad in the Boondocks. It's a unique true crime podcast featuring a father-son duo from way back in the boondocks of South Carolina who talk all things true crime, especially things that happen from back in the sticks. So, if you like a little humor and love true crime, listen to Bad in the Boondocks today. It's available on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Himalaya, TuneIn, and everywhere that you listen to podcasts. Just search for it, Bad in the Boondocks, and be sure to follow and subscribe so you won't miss anything that is Bad in the Boondocks. Also, check out the website badintheboondocks.net for more information. Bad in the Boondocks. Go listen, download, and subscribe today.
Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/thestateofperfectbalance and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audibletrial.com/thestateofperfectbalance. And might I suggest the book Don't Tell Teacher? It was awesome. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode.
This podcast deals with true events of a violent and disturbing nature, intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
The child was born less than a day, just hours after the body was found. She concealed or removed blood and or the body of the baby.
Hey guys, I'm your host Amanda, and this is The State of Perfect Balance. Okay. You've heard the standard warning about the possibly disturbing nature of the story I'm about to tell you. But I want to go beyond that and caution you that this tale may make you genuinely uncomfortable and open questions in your mind about the nature of life, the taking of a life, and the suitable punishment resulting from that theft. Because the story of Emily Weaver and her newborn daughter, Addison Grace Weaver, leaves us with plenty of horror, mingled with empathy, internal questioning, and a good look at the gray area between wickedly wrong and wrong in a way that you can kind of understand, and a wrong which has plenty of precedence, as in thousands of years of precedence. In the end, it's hard to see anything but heartbreak for all concerned. And this is her story. First, full disclosure, the tiny town in which our story is set is my own hometown. Furthermore, the university involved is my own alma mater, but I promise to be as objective as possible. New Concord, Ohio, despite its tiny population of 2,500 people on a good day and when school is in session, has some rather remarkable claims to fame. Foremost, it's the home of John and Annie Glenn. John Glenn was the first man to orbit the Earth aboard Friendship 7, and went on to become a long-serving United States Senator who was well-liked on both sides of the aisle. New Concord is also home to the well-respected Muskingum University, a private liberal arts college associated with the Presbyterian Church. It's a small school. Classes typically number less than 200, with a professor-to-student ratio of about 1 to 25, which dwindles to perhaps 8 students per professor once you near graduation and you hone in on your major. Still, having a degree from Muskingum doesn't exactly hurt a graduate's resume. New Concord is also home to John Glenn High School, and while rich in lucky associations, New Concord is largely unremarkable. Parked between Columbus to the west and largely overshadowed by Cambridge to the south. The area is also home to dozens of unsolved murders of prostitutes sure to be the subject of our future episodes. Striking out at the beginning of a college education marks many firsts for late teens. It's the beginning of independence and likely the first extended period away from family and familiar home environment. It's the beginning of true responsibility for your own life. It marks the start of the sobering reality of necessary debt. Along with these newfound freedoms comes an adjustment to the consequences of said freedoms. College students experiment, often for the first time, with alcohol, drugs, sex, and many other things that make being free of parental bedtimes and strict rules such a wonderful thing. Emily Weaver was a sophomore at Muskingum for the 2014-2015 year. She was from Clarington, a tiny spot just over the Ohio River from West Virginia. She was a member of the Delta Gamma Theta sorority, known for its strict admission requirements and extreme hazing rituals. I remember when I was there that the Delta sorority used to do what they called hate walks. So yeah. Greek life is a key part of the campus culture at Muskingum, and not always in a positive way. One of the fraternities there became so deeply engaged in the drugging and raping of young women that the usually reluctant university stepped in and closed it down. In the summer before the school year began, Emily Weaver, to her unwelcome surprise, became pregnant, a fact which she seemed to have treated as fiction which would go away, pretty much ignoring it. She did the exact opposite of prenatal care, and continued drinking, smoking weed, playing dodgeball, taking supplements thought to cause miscarriages, and other behavior in hopes of bringing about a spontaneous solution. As her condition became visible, and then obvious, she convinced herself otherwise, hiding her stomach behind holding pillows in front of herself and wearing oversized clothing. Her sorority sisters guessed at the reason for her expanding body, and a background debate arose. Despite Emily's claims otherwise, was she, in fact, pregnant? There were actually 3 people who knew the truth: Emily, her boyfriend, and the university staff. She had been to the campus clinic to get birth control, which required an automatic pregnancy test. She tested positive, and the clinic called and mailed a certified letter confirming what Emily already knew. Emily didn't respond or acknowledge the notices. At one point, she and her boyfriend left the campus to get an abortion. Apparently, the weather turned bad and roads were closed, and they were forced to abandon the idea. An abortion was never procured, and for a student, money was likely also an issue. Any young woman who becomes pregnant while pursuing her college education is going to be faced with a tsunami of emotions and reactions, each one tied to outright panic. Such a situation can derail a life, bring about decades of financial struggle, which of course you're already going to have because you're a university student, and it's going to cause the loss of any education already completed. Recognizing that a pregnant student is in crisis, is in need of serious help, and may not be thinking clearly, a university has at least some responsibility within its student services structure to identify such situations and provide unbiased information and assistance. Someone to say, let's look at where you are and identify your options. Muskingum has no such mechanism in place, which is odd given the high number of pregnancies that occur among the student body of most U.S. campuses. The university was of no help beyond informing her, but Emily certainly didn't seem to seek out much help either. She kept denying she was pregnant and saw no other possible solution than for the baby to be gone, somehow. Eventually, the baby came to full term. On April 22, 2015, at about 8 a.m., Emily locked herself in the Delta bathroom, and went through labor alone. The other sorority sisters heard her muffled cries, but oddly assumed someone was in there playing a video game. One of them later said she heard 3 or 4 cries that sounded like a dying cat. Emily was still denying the reality of the pregnancy, had not allowed herself to think in terms of being a mother or having a child or what that child might be like. She'd seen her unborn child as one might see an illness, something that will pass and be gone. I said no so many times to myself that in my mind, none of this was happening, she said. So Emily placed her newborn daughter in a plastic trash bag and took the bag outside the sorority house and placed it on the ground next to the trash barrels. She threw her baby away. Emily then texted her boyfriend, "No more baby." "What?" he said. She typed out the words again, "No more baby." "How do you know?" he asked. "Taken care of. Don't worry about it." He then asked, "I would like to know how you killed my kid." It would later be learned that this boyfriend was not the baby's father after all. Meanwhile, at the sorority house, the sorority president sent out a text to all the girls. Whoever had left that mess in the bathroom had better get it cleaned up. "It looks like a murder scene in there," it said. Emily resumed her day in a daze, claiming to feel unwell. Her sorority sisters went to get ice cream and talked amongst themselves. "You don't suppose she's actually pregnant and she couldn't have given birth in the bathroom, right? I mean, there was all that blood, but come on, no way, right?" They decided to check the trash on a hunch, just in case. And there they found the bag. Tearing it open, they saw a tiny foot and immediately called authorities. It was later determined in the autopsy that the child had indeed been born healthy and alive and had suffocated in the trash bag hours later. Emily said she believed the child was already dead when she was born. And it wasn't until the fact of the pregnancy became known and she began to admit it to herself, to see the fullness of the last 9 months and the culmination of those months in a bathroom alone, that she had begun to grasp reality. She named the baby Addison Grace Weaver. There was a funeral, and she said it wasn't until she saw her daughter in the tiny coffin that it all hit her with full force, the horrifying reality of what she had done. Emily was arrested and held on $1 million bond. Her trial lasted just 4 days, and then it came time for sentencing. And here is where we have to rewind for a moment, because this case isn't unique. It happened at least once before, in 2002, in the same town on the same campus. Jennifer Bryant, age 21, was also a student at Muskingum and lived just a few doors away from the house where Emily Weaver gave birth to her own daughter 13 years later. Jennifer Bryant had concealed her pregnancy, given birth to a son, and discarded the newborn in the trash. She, too, claimed to believe he was stillborn. Jennifer Bryant was charged with manslaughter, and prosecutor D. Michael Haddocks presented evidence that resulted in a conviction. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison by Judge Mark Flegel. She served just 7 months. Emily Weaver was charged with aggravated murder, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. The same judge who presided at Jennifer Bryant's case in 2002 sentenced Emily to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And it was the same prosecuting attorney, Mr. Haddocks, who made the case against Emily for the state. Both had taken some heat for Bryant's light sentencing earlier and wanted to make sure this one was punished severely. The case remains in the appeals process and is currently before the Ohio Supreme Court. As her defense, she claimed to have been unaware of the pregnancy until she suddenly gave birth, which was clearly not the case. She had taken 80 tablets of a supplement called Black Cohosh, which carried the warning, "Do not take if pregnant," just a few days before the birth. There are many good questions to be asked here, but the chief question is, what is a pregnant girl at a small university in a tiny town far from home supposed to do? What could she do? A very strong-willed young woman could probably say, "Look, I'm pregnant and I need some help here." But that's rare. College is a time of forging friendships with people who are close by all the time. Everyone in the group or sorority might quietly know who is having sex and how often and with whom, but the girl who is pregnant is carrying around a visible badge which leaves her private activity in no doubt, especially in a very small area. There is still, even in the 21st century, shame attached to an unexpected pregnancy. So what is this girl to do? What is the university's responsibility? At a large campus in a metropolitan area, one would expect the school to have counselors on staff who could assist, but Muskingum is no such large school. This is a problem that has occurred before at the same school, and there's still no mechanism in place for dealing with it. But what can they do? HIPAA laws prohibit sharing healthcare information, and the university tried to at least inform her of her pregnancy results. But that's where it ends. What of the option of terminating the pregnancy? Well, in Ohio, abortions cost from $500 to $1,200. Who, as a student, has that kind of money? And it's easy to say she should have given the baby up for adoption, but that doesn't address the very real desire of the mother to keep the whole pregnancy secret and private to avoid the public shame of a student pregnancy. We cannot, of course, condone what Emily Weaver did, which was obviously not the route she should have chosen to address her unwanted pregnancy. But in fairness, was her sentence too harsh? It's certainly harsh when one compares her case with other similar ones. But what do you think? What would you do? Away at school, beginning your second year, you're expecting a baby, and the father is not in the picture. What would you do? Thank you for listening to episode 16 of The State of Perfect Balance. You can follow us on Instagram at The State of Perfect Balance Pod, on Twitter at State Perfect. Check out our website at thestateofperfectbalance.com. And remember, we bring you new episodes every other Sunday night with solved and unsolved murders in the smallest towns across Ohio. And please consider becoming a patron supporter. You can find out more on Podbean. And remember, lock your doors. Evil lives everywhere. Not all small towns are safe.